Unique New York. Unique New York. What's up and welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Hello, I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. With me today, I have my co-host Tim Ryan, lead man at StartWheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business no matter the climate. So is communication really critical in a business succeeding? If anyone in the world has this answer, it's this guy, Danny Rubin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you both.
Mr. Rubin.
Pleasure to be here.
Should I have done that in like news cadence? Like we talked about that briefly right before.
This. No, we don't need
Welcome
to
to the Fervent 4. Did you know? Like honestly, it's so weird. Like that's the thing, right? People have, I guess, news people have a different voice. Like,
which looking back on my time in TV news,
listen to I think the one who does it the most is like Blaine Stewart, locally. I'll have I haven't seen him in forever, but every once in a while, I'll see he'll throw up a clip, and I'm like, that is not your voice. That's not your voice.
It is a little taught. I think I sort of went through this in my own progression in journalism. It's this tendency to feel like we have to sound important, and we put on this fake cadence and rhythm. Mm-hmm. And really, I think about it a lot because I would listen back to myself back then, and I was probably pressing too much. And if I was back in that seat today, I would try to be way more casual with how I talk, still being presentable and professional, but trying to be more person to person than I'm the newsman and here's
Good evening. I'm
Ron Burgundy.
Actually, it's interesting. I think about my last year at the old news station. Maybe we could talk about that for a second. But I worked with Bob Matthews a lot. And that dude, now that I'm thinking about it, he did it to a T. Yeah. So we would roll around. So Tim, what happens is you usually are paired with someone.
Well, not as much anymore, but yeah.
They don't do. Oh yeah.
One man band is
now. One man. Oh really? Band. So that's heavy now. Okay. So back in the day, way back yonder in 2007 ish time frame. It would be a photographer with a reporter or whatever. They go to do a news story, and you would spend the day with that person, literally in a car. And working in news is literally just sitting in a car all day. People don't realize that. It really is. I think I put 30,000 miles on a car one year, something ridiculous.
Wow. A lot of driving.
And so Bob Matthews and I would do a lot the last year because we basically were the evil stepchilds at the station at that point. TLB hated us, and that's the old news director's name.
I know.
that's her initials. And we would walk around, we'd hang out, we'd get lunch, we'd do the interviews and everything like that. And then he'd do the voiceover, he'd go live or something, and we would literally be talking, and then he would immediately change his voice. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
I know. It's ridiculous. I agree. So I do think about that a lot because I think it's sort of the best journalists out there. I think they learn to be more conversational and real and not sort of over modulated. And it's something that you have to kind of go through as a progression in that profession, but really in any job, you want to be yourself. You don't want to act like
you and I left, I guess, in similar time frames in TV. So that's where you and I met many, many moons ago. When you coached, you moved to DC, you coached, I guess, some media departments, it sounded like. Did you say something like that?
No.
In that where it's
No, my job in DC, I worked for a large media research firm called Magid, MAGID, and they do a lot of consulting with news outlets. But one of the things I did, one of my projects was I did research and consulting with Meet the Press. So at the time, it was for David Gregory, who was the show host after Tim Russert, who passed away. And it was a tough act to follow. The show actually slid a little bit. Now it's Chuck Todd. He's the host. So I was in no position to tell David Gregory to work on his cadence. I was I'm
24, work on your cadence, bro.
Yeah. I was just there to do whatever I was asked to do. So I didn't really get in on that level. I was working with network people and MSNBC people, and I stayed away from that. It was more research and sort of strategy stuff. But I do listen for that all the time when I watch people on the air. I'm obviously looking at it through a different lens than a viewer, because I've been on that side and I know what that job is, and I know, how they're piecing these stories together.
How long do you think someone has to go through like training, or just to hit that comfort level, to hit the cadence that you're talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, these folks make it look so easy, and then you get startups and entrepreneurs that go on stage for the first time and they just totally crash and burn. So
I think
not to mention, even just as you're answering this, Danny, think about it just from like the live aspect to the non-live aspect of it. Because there is two different swings of that.
Yeah, I think to really get comfortable and fluent with live TV, you got to do it several thousand times. And because there's so many variables and there's so many environments where there's noise and there's distraction, and you got to do it for a while. And that's why most reporters, young out of school, they start in small markets. They go to small cities where you can make mistakes. Nobody's going to really put you under a microscope. And then you work your way up to the bigger markets when you're ready. It takes several years. As in any industry, any job, you got to really ride it out. You got to live it and breathe it and do it. And you got to get knocked around for a bit. And then you're going to come out of it ready for that bigger stage.
Do you think that there's similarities by going live on TV and kind of going live on stage somewhere?
Oh, I use these skills every day. I'm doing webinars constantly. I'm doing, I used to do presentations in person, hopefully again, to large rooms, small rooms. Absolutely. I say to people, like, all these skills are coming out of being on camera, and I'm sharing those skills back with you and students and whomever, because this is what works and this is what professionals do. And you can apply these skills to any occupation, any managerial track, anything you want to do. You have to know how to communicate. So I'm just taking straight off that, because what I'm doing a lot of work with education. So they love to hear the term industry best practice. They want to know that they're giving students what industry prefers. So I always say, I'm sharing with you industry best practice for communication from the real world into the classroom. And they always lean forward on that because they know they're getting like the real stuff.
That's interesting. I always tell people, you have this thing if you have a social media account, you can go live pretty much anywhere, right? And so actually today is apparently the first day I've ever actually had access to LinkedIn Live. I've been trying to get this thing for like 3.5 years. So we broadcast today for the first time ever. You're the first one ever on the show live on LinkedIn on Zach's account. Awesome. I don't know why it took him 3.5 damn years, but here we are. But going live, you can practice a lot. And a lot of times there's not huge rooms watching, so you can move with the punches. And so I always advise people, like, hey, if this is a thing that you want to do, getting in front of a lot of people, feeling more comfortable in that, press record, and go live, because it's a significant opportunity for people to learn. And by the way, the people who like make fun of people and like bully people in that kind of instance, like, oh, that looks so easy. Cool, you go do it. And like understand how difficult it is, and then do it in like a studio too, where it's hot as hell. Like I did a live podcast the other day somewhere, and they had lights and craziness, and I was just like, I totally forgot like how damn hot it gets in those situations. Like, it ain't easy.
Absolutely. I think it's the best training ground that I could have gone through. I always am grateful that I did TV news and that I got kicked around, had a tough boss, had some really challenging moments on live TV. It's made me who I am, and it has absolutely impacted everything that I'm doing today. So I wouldn't trade it. And I do see Leanne Rains Benedetto, who
she thinks you're a rock star. I mean,
hello. And she's been on TV. She did it. She knows. Right. So she knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is a difficult scenario, and so I mean, the live aspect of it is a wild ride. I mean, have you ever done anything super live, Tim? Other than like in person stuff?
There's nothing like it. I mean, you're out there on a tightrope. There's no net. You just got to go. And
we talked about it a few weeks ago, just with Tim, like when we did when I did Hampton Roads Business Weekly, him being on that and how kind of nervous he was just on something like that. And that's something that's recorded.
Right.
And so like, it is a difficult thing.
Nothing. I did a presentation yesterday for educators in Georgia. It was virtual because their conference is still virtual. And somebody in the middle of the Zoom had access to like admin controls, and they started scribbling like red lines on the screen.
Kind of like the
Everybody's
cat course
messed up to
case.
it, and I'm presenting, and I'm like, whatever. I can still see what's on my screen. I'm just going to deal with it. I was like, well, live TV, folks, here we go. And I just kept talking for the next 45 minutes with these red lines all over the screen. You think
people are going to get better at this skill because of the last year on Zoom, or do you think it makes no difference?
Well, I don't think the act of having Zoom and presenting this way would make them better. You have to be intentional about it. You have to learn. You have to practice in a thoughtful way.
Well, how many people are on Zooms like that, right?
Well,
they don't even. Yeah, they don't even. They'd have a black screen up the whole time,
right.
Or they have
or they're like this.
Oh, hey guys, it's me.
So no, I don't. I mean, people are becoming more fluent with virtual presentations because we're doing them so much, but it doesn't necessarily, people fall into habits they don't even know are poor habits. And so they'll just keep doing it. And so often you see people make mistakes or run into the same, hiccups, and nobody ever stops them and says, hey, you might want to work on that. It's very rare somebody would stop you in your tracks and say, hey, actually, I noticed you doing this or that. You should consider. Many times we just kind of roll through what we do and nobody ever stops us. Even if it's a clear mistake.
From your point of view, what are the top three mistakes people are making that they don't even realize they're doing?
The number one thing is they don't respect the audience. They do not understand that people get bored very quickly. When I'm giving a presentation, I'm asking the audience questions every 2 minutes, even rhetorical questions that we all know the answer to. Because I know that when you answer me in the chat or out loud, I'm resetting your attention every 2 minutes. So people do not respect the audience. They don't come in with a plan. They don't know how they're going to get from point A to point B. And people just are very quickly tune out of the conversation. So the biggest thing is knowing what you want to say and making it more of a conversation than a presentation.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm sorry, Zack, to go a little deeper and asking that a question every 2 minutes. I think that's you got to be a really confident presenter in order to do that. How do you get to that point? How do you get to that point? Or what exercises would you recommend someone do to gain that confidence?
Right. So again, this is where journalism comes into play because it's asking questions on the fly, live questions in the moment. And so a lesson that we share with schools that we work with is an exercise where students learn to talk to somebody face to face, like a classmate, and they learn to ask follow-up questions in the moment based on what the person said. So for instance, if the person said, I just had a really fun weekend, then the student across from them should say, well, what did you do? Where did you go? How was it? Right. And then they say, oh, I saw this really great movie. What movie did you see? Right. So it's learning to be quickly in the moment, staying in the moment, listening, or being mindful of how to take that conversation further. The other thing just with presenting and asking questions is you got to know your own material, right? Like I know my material. I know where I want to direct conversations. So I already know what I want to ask the group. So I'm just working through the progression of getting the group to sort of that aha moment. I know what I want to ask, and I'm just getting there as I go, but I'm just mindful all the time that, I'm talking too long, time to ask a question. How many of you have experienced that before, right? Raise your hand in Zoom if you've experienced that. Tell me in the chat if you've experienced that.
I think even with that, Tim, something that I've done in the past, I'm sure Danny's doing as well, is like if no one responds, which by the way happens, if it's not a live crowd, like a lively crowd, you have a canned story to tell in that situation. Right. And so you're like, okay, well, if no one's going to say anything, or if I don't get the answer that I want, guess what? We're going to talk about Peggy Sue and this story that, it swings it back in. So I think people don't do that. What's interesting about everything did you get to 3 or did you only get to 2? But
somewhere there.
2.5, whatever. What I think is interesting is if people were to just watch news and dissect it on a how can I do this for myself perspective, I think they could learn a tremendous amount. Okay, what is this person doing on TV to get the authority of the audience? How am I watching this to keep them in? Why is this news story only 60 to 90 seconds? Why is this story not live? Why is this story kind of a national story? I always like to look at obviously you guys know I'm a huge wrestling fan, so I think Vince McMahon is probably the greatest media advertiser promoter in the world, and just the way that he continually promotes things, even in show, like, oh, hey, in 10 minutes, this thing's about to pop up. Like, this is something that most people don't do because I guess they don't respect that industry to do it. I don't. That's probably
he's showing you how to do it. And
Zach, the same thing every day.
If you remember, Zach, in the Wayback Machine, everything that I'm doing, it all started with a blog, and the blog was called News to Live By. And so I would look at the news and I would dissect it, not through left and right, liberal, conservative, right or wrong. I would say, let's look at the communication skills, the leadership skills, the organizational skills that we are observing through people in the news, whether it's the newscasters themselves or the people they interview. Presidential debate, I'm not focused on what they're saying. I'm focused on how they're presenting. Yeah. Right. So that was the whole origin. That's when it all started.
Yeah. So give us the 60-second, like, that was the last 10 years, but in 60 seconds, because, we don't need people to turn off.
I understand.
At this point, right? We don't need those viewers. Yeah.
We have them. I'm going to get in here and I'm going to stop. Right on the cusp. They're right here with us. I don't want to spoil that. Yeah. So, all right, 60 seconds, 2012, I started a blog on looking at the communication skills in the news, realized the audience really valued what I was doing around templates for emails the most, that through my Google search traffic, niche down on templates, made a library of templates, generated 1 million organic views in a year and a half to writing templates, turned those templates into a book of templates for email communication, for jobs, for LinkedIn, for networking. And then in the process of writing that, learned there was an application in education for that material, realized I needed to create lesson plans around the book examples. And that's been the last 4.5 or so years of developing an online platform for learning that combines writing examples with lesson plans and grading tools and videos and all this whole thing now. And the company has evolved from a personal blog into an educational company teaching students communication skills all over the country. That's the last 9 years. Was it a minute?
Oh gosh, I
think that was pretty close.
See it behind. I've been rapping this kid like crazy. Actually, I didn't.
I can't see. You keep putting me full screen. If you're giving me one of these rapid signs,
I'm like looking at my clock. I'm like,
that was pretty good, man.
I mean, it was 270 seconds, but who's counting?
You are.
How much of Danny? I'm curious. How much of the communication process, from your point of view, deals with how you frame something? The point of view in which you're communicating to that person.
Well, the biggest thing with communication is being clear with your intention, being clear with the purpose of your message. So what I always instruct people to do is to put the main purpose of your message at the beginning. It's often our tendency, if we're asking for somebody to help us, for advice, for mentorship, for a job, whatever, we ask at the end. Oh, and by the way, are you free to meet with me to talk about an opportunity? And I recommend people say it at the beginning. You say your name and who you are, and then you say, I'm writing
the diamond method, basically, that we learned in journalism, where it's like the crazy headline.
Yes, it's called bottom line up front, or don't bury the lead. Again, it's all journalism, but it's applicable to real life every day.
Incredibly applicable.
Yeah, but people often don't do it because they're afraid to ask for what they want, and they bury it down at the bottom. And busy people need to know right away, why are you writing me? So then you make your ask early, and then everything else below that sort of reinforces your ask. I'm explain my credentials or whatever the next thing that comes, but it has to be couched within like, what the heck is this email or this conversation all about? So that when you talk about framing a message, that's the best plan of attack, is to always lead with your ask and everything else follows.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zack and I both working with hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs. I mean, that's the number one thing that people, these folks are always going wrong. It's like they're afraid to make that ask, or they're really good at what they do, but they don't know how to communicate it in a way that's concise. And there's just such a need for what it is that you're doing. And I know that when I get an investor update from a company, like just as you said, too long, didn't read, put everything right up front, and then you can go dive deeper throughout the rest.
Yeah, you have to summarize top line summaries, executive summaries. These things matter. We're an attention deficit starved culture. So that's a lot of what I'm showing people to do even at young ages, is how to communicate clearly so that your message is received. And that has application for everything we're saying all day long.
What age do you think is the right age to start to learn these skills?
Elementary school.
So is your kid in elementary school yet? I mean, I know he's trying to be a professional baseball player.
My son will be in first grade. We're doing interesting projects right now as early as sixth grade, with teaching some of these skills, these basic writing skills, how to communicate, how to send a message, how to talk to people, with a big project outside of Atlanta this fall in sixth grade.
I'm going to ask you a similar question that I asked Jason Calacanis at Start Peninsula a few years ago, which is one of the lead investors that Growth University company that we were talking about is there, and kind of found off of what's the story from a little bit of money to the greatest angel investor of all time, Jason Calacanis, something like that, Tim?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So you have a kid, true or false, you believe that you've been pretty gritty and resilient in the last 10 years of getting from News to Live By to Rubin in general, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So knowing that so many people, now this is kind of a generalization, knowing that so many people believe that grit and resilience and kind of participation trophy life is something that we've been pushing so much, what are you doing to teach your kid how to be resilient through these times? And maybe Tim, you can share as well, since you have kids. What are you doing to kind of push that resiliency, grit kind of mindset in them, instilled in them, so that they don't just show up, if you will?
Well, I mean, trying as he's 6 years old, but with anybody, a young person that I'm talking to, I try to relate to them that nothing is going to come easy. Nothing ever really works out the way you think it's going to. There's no clear path. There will be obstacles. I could say all day long, what matters is how you handle it. But actually what I find more productive for everybody, and this was the session I did yesterday in Georgia. The session was all about providing activities to the classroom on how to handle failure. So it was like, when somebody doesn't answer your email you send them and you think that they just don't like you and you don't write them back, or they write you and say, we've chosen someone else for this job, or somebody says, hey, you need to work on this or that, you're not very good at this or that. And the reaction for a lot of young people today is to fall apart. And so I'm trying to provide them with practical solutions to how to respond to those moments, giving them templates, guides, scripts, so they know how to handle when these situations arise, and they'll push through it because they have the tools to do so. I don't think it's very useful to just tell people a lot of rah-rah speeches. Oh, challenges are going to happen. Fight through them. Here's a meme that says it. And here's a GIF and this might help you. I'm trying to live in the real life and give people actual tools to manage these moments, because they're going to happen. They happen to all of us. They happened to me yesterday. I had a really annoying situation and time to deal with that. So, I mean, I'd rather live in the reality of giving people tools than just telling them, hey, it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
And you got to go through it a lot, I guess, right? You got to live it, right? There's nothing like just genuinely living it.
No, and that's true too. I mean, there's nothing I could say that would replace real life. But when real life does happen, wouldn't it be nice to have an example email you can use to respond to that tough moment, or at least to work off of? And that's the role that I play.
Yeah, and I think from my point of view, Zach, it's one of those deals where, I mean, my wife and I, we never talked to our kids like they were kids. We talked to them as if they were adults from the very beginning. And so they were never babied, and when they were put in a position, they had to handle that position, handle that whatever it was on their own. We didn't jump in and do the talking for them. They had to learn how to do that from the very beginning. So a perfect example is yesterday, Drew wanted some more schedule, more time at work. So we went and he talked to his supervisor and said he was available to do more work. And they added 3 shifts to his schedule. So you gotta put them in those positions and not be the helicopter parent.
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably have more of those in the years to come. Still a little young, but
sure. But it's always amazing to me, though, hearing parents, that just talk to their kids like they're babies when they're 7 or 8 years old. Like they pick up these bad habits. And then going to a question I have for you, Danny, it's like, man, I think this is so crazy that like during elementary school and middle school and high school, kids, they have all these presentations that they have to do, but they've never gone through a presentation class before they had to start doing all these presentations. So they just pick up these bad habits because they replicate whatever it is that they saw someone else do before them. So is there actions that are going on right now to implement, or is that your mission to bring presentation classes earlier in the academic process?
Yes. So really the niche that I've come upon is there's a huge gap in teaching email etiquette in schools. To your exact point, it is not formally taught, and it's assumed for many years, decades even, that students would just know how to write an email because they know how to code and make an app and play video games and very fluent with phones and technology, but they're not the same skill. So there's this enormous hole in every city and town and urban, rural, rich, poor, everywhere, that students don't know how to send just a basic message to advocate for themselves for an opportunity. So you're right. They're having students send emails, they're having students give presentations, but they're not teaching them how to do it. And the end product is not good. Everyone knows that. Employers complain, colleges don't like it. Everyone's asking for more soft skills training. And there's really no clear formal solution until now.
And head on over to rubineducation.com for that. Quick plug for that, right? So was it easy to figure that out? Like, because it's so interesting it's interesting as we just talk about this. It's like, even the example that Tim gave, it's like, oh, these kids have to give presentations. They have to get on stage, do this thing. Yet they've never even like in the slightest been taught how to do this thing. Like, I just think about like swim practice when I was a head coach, and like, it's like, yo kid, the way that you get on this team is you have to swim across the pool. And that's night one. And we haven't taught you a damn thing. So it's like, it's almost like, hold on a second. My job is only comes into place as the head coach of a swim team if you have any kind of idea of how to swim, which is interesting. And so so much about life is like that. I mean, we do need to teach that thing first.
It's been the most overlooked. It's been the most overlooked, underserved skill in America over the last 20 years. And it's only really reached a fever point and a real problem since the pandemic. I'm telling you, because I would go to exhibit halls pre-pandemic and I'd have my booth and all my things, my email etiquette lessons. And they're like, oh, what a neat idea. What a cool little thing you got. And now when I show it, they're like, Lord Jesus, what does this cost? Help me, because I can't handle reading 150 emails every day from ninth graders that look like chicken scratch. And then the employers are now asking for more of it. And so it's finally reached a point where everybody recognizes like this is a problem we need solving. But for me to arrive at the product in time for the audience to be ready, it took the last 9 years of being on this journey to kind of arrive with a product and start to understand this audience, understand that customer, that avatar and the pain points, and like listen to them and what they need and do custom software development. And like it took a very long time. And now I'm in a position where there's high demand. There's really my company providing this exact solution. I don't have a ton of competition. So it's a great opportunity, but it took a long time to get here. And now I'm trying to build my moat.
Yeah, I think interesting something that Leanne says is just, understanding where someone is coming from. Doesn't matter who they are, but really just grasping and understanding what they're saying in the situation, I think is something that's incredibly important. The context of the story, the context of the person that's going through that thing. You hear books and podcasts talk about people bitch about someone who's going through, oh, this person, they did XYZ bad thing to me. And it's just like, how dare them do this? And it's like, well, what if they're having a really bad day, right? Why? Maybe they ran the red light that you're mad at because they're on the way to the emergency room for something else. And it's, oftentimes it's all about me mentality. And it's like, calm down sometimes, and think about other people.
The things that I talk about all the time, I say, look, we learn these things in the sandbox. We learn them in kindergarten. You treat people the way you want to be treated. And you can apply that lesson to everything you'll ever do in your life, is you treat people the way you want them to talk to you. And if you do that, then you'll get to that next phase. You'll get through that next door. If you don't, then you won't. And it's like, we all know these things innately. We're taught these things at a young age, but then we forget that they still matter when we're adults. And even in these little one-off moments, these email exchanges, these phone calls, these Zooms, presentations, right? We forget that the same mentality, the same lessons apply even in these everyday adult life.
Yeah. So I mean, based on that, you were doing this was how everything started with you. And then I want to get to how you transitioned to the services and software platform. Is this because there was such a demand for what you were doing that you had to find a way to scale in order to walk us through that transition?
So I've always had an interest for several years in scaling this knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I could only go so far if I'm the one going and like doing the workshops or doing like one-on-one resume review or, doing these types of things. I knew there was just a cap on that. And so I initially had experimented with a course that was more like B2C, just sort of like out there, people on the street, helping them with their job applications. But I didn't like that because I still was getting involved in people's day-to-day applications, helping through a Facebook group. And I didn't like getting like people off the street to pay with their own money. I really found a home in education because it just aligns more with, it's not high pressure sales. It's not putting them on the clock. It's not like deadline selling. But it is scalable, and it does align sort of with my own sort of personality. But I've always had an interest for several years in creating a software as a service model for this type of knowledge. And now I'm trying to get better and better with like selling licenses of this product to school divisions and like institutions, which is its own world and its own challenge. And I'm learning every day, and I'm acting like I've been there every day, even as the requests get larger. And I'm like, let's just kind of, work this out. And so I've always had an interest in this. It wasn't because I started to do like in-class workshops. I'm like, wait, I can't scale this. The idea from the very beginning with schools was let's build a platform that can scale. I started it in 2017, and it's growing. Look, I'm not sitting here telling you I got like 100 million users, but it's growing. I've hired one person this year. I hope to hire more in 2022. And it's very, very scalable. It's as long as I have the manpower to do so.
How do you understand, from a context perspective, how do you gauge, how do you understand, how do you really articulate what someone is telling you to then turn that into something that is a good business decision? Because I think most people suck at that, right? Even just from this person didn't respond to me in my email, they must hate me. What did I do wrong? Right? And so and then there's the business aspect of it and that was just like probably not even a business case example that I just gave. Yep. But how do you really grasp what someone's telling you? Because there's so many people teaching this stuff out there, and they're like, just have customer discovery meetings. I'm like, yeah, but there's so much deeper information there that you you might actually find something that's bigger there. Yep. If you actually listen and do that. Yep. So what you've done this for the last 10 years, what are you thinking?
Yeah. So I'll give you a great example. And it's actually the thing that I want to do a screen share for. So hopefully it'll work. I listen all the time. I've never been in the classroom. I've never taught formally. So I'm listening to the teachers to guide me. One of the biggest things I learned early on, and you really talk about getting into a space, right? Like understanding a space, a niche in industry. And in the educational space, they want all their learning materials to live on the school's own platform. So do you know the term single sign-on? Where students you don't have to go to another website. It's integrated to your own environment, right? Yep. So I didn't understand that at the beginning. I was sort of on the outside looking in, and many of the initial engagements fizzled out because I wasn't delivering the material the way that they needed it done. So I went out and I found a developer who had experience in the ed tech space, and he helped me build a custom solution that would then deliver this content into a school's platform. That was directly from teacher feedback, and that has been an absolute 180 game changer for me. And if I can share and show you, it'll really help you understand. Hold on. Okay, here we go.
We've never done this before. This will be exciting. Hey, we're learning on the fly.
Okay, can you see my screen? It says emerge here. Did this share okay?
I think I need to add it to the stream.
There it is.
You see it? Okay.
Yep.
So let me explain this, and I'll do it in under 60 seconds, I promise. So this is a website called Canvas. Canvas is one of the most dominant learning management platforms that schools use, high school and college around the country. It's like Blackboard, but it's a little bit slicker. And so a lot of large school divisions use Canvas. So what they needed was for my company to put our content directly into their learning environment. So now, like an activity where they learn to not send emails like text messages, instead of taking them to an external website with an external login, it actually brings them to the content right inside of their learning platform without a sign-in screen. Now that
Canvas, so Canvas allows you as an independent third party to openly provide data. Interesting.
Yes. So yes. So the bottom line is, by doing that little thing, that's just this little tiny little tech shortcut, right?
But
it's actually it's a monumental advancement for my business, because now I'm able to work with very large school divisions and large universities who can take this content and place it across their system, have thousands of students use it at the same time, and nobody has to make a new password. And that is a game changer for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there in that same sandbox, right?
I'm already in their world. I'm in their world. It's like I did all the work for them. They just click on it and do it. And so that has allowed me to grow and to have the biggest thing with this business model, as you know, in a SaaS play like this, it's about renewals. So I'm after the renewal. And so if I can get renewals and start to count on that business, I can start to really scale and grow and get the next one and renew them and just keep moving.
And the actual business didn't change in that. The content didn't change at all. My guess is it didn't change at all. It's just you had to find the sandbox that you could play in to make it appropriate.
I had to find the person with the knowledge. And I'll tell you, he built such a custom solution that I've been in front of people who approve of these third-party tools through large universities all day. And they saw my solution. They're like, wow, I've never seen one that slick before. And I found him through Upwork. He lives in the United States, but really well-priced freelancer who's brilliant. And he absolutely flipped the switch for my business. And now I'm talking with systems like Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Fairfax County, Charlotte, Boston, big cities. And because I integrate like this, they'll talk to me.
And does that give you access to all the metrics that you need? So when it goes back to renewals, that you can say, look, you've got 99% of your students that are using this.
Well, the biggest thing to understand is they're actually still in our website. It's an iframe. They're in our site. They do have an account. It's just that they're not having to log in. So we have all the data on our side still. It's all happening in our world. We're just bringing our world to them and making everything easier. And this should be the same for corporate training too. These tools exist. And if you're trying to deliver an outside learning platform and you're not inside of their own world, you're going to struggle. I'll tell you right now, it's starting the process of working with Los Angeles Unified School District, which is obviously like an absolute monster of a school division. And they won't even talk to you if you don't integrate into their learning system the way I just showed you. There's a gigantic technical requirement application. And if you don't do this, that you will not work with them.
How do you make a business decision off of something like that? So I remember, a lot of ad agencies do a big pitch beforehand. I saw this on the show, The Pitch on AMC, right? Where I was surprised at how much work they did beforehand. And maybe that was just for TV, but how do you make a business decision on something? It sounds like you would have to do some more development work in this case, or is
no, for me, it's already done. It's done. Okay. I've done it.
But how do you make that case to see how serious is someone for that? Because I remember there were times where even when I was just building 1004, where we would build features because someone would say it and then they didn't pull the trigger. And I'm like, time, money, resources, everything. It's just this is ridiculous. So how do you make that decision to say, how serious is that feature?
Well, again, it comes back to audience. It's the customer's always right. If they're telling me you got to do this or we can't work with you, then what choice do I have? I'm like, I got to do this or I can't move forward. It was obvious to me.
But I had situations where they tell me that and then they still didn't pull the trigger. Did you, I made
the decision to pull the trigger. I went out there, I've bootstrapped this business. I've spent a lot of money. to reinvest, to pay somebody like him, for example, to build that feature in so that I could move the business forward. So I'm always willing to invest the money when it's clear to me, abundantly clear to me, that this is the next way forward. And I don't think it's just like an instinctual thing. Like some people have instincts and some don't. Like somebody straight up telling me, add this feature or I can't pay you. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And then that's just opened up the whole world of this industry to me. But comes back to like, okay, this is my space. This is the ed tech space. We're not all in ed tech, but whatever industry you're in, if you don't understand it down to the absolute foundational level, like the nuts and bolts of how everything is built, if you don't get that and you keep trying to like sell into it and it keeps getting pushed back, you're not listening. You're just not listening.
Fascinating. What, so with that, is that a double-edged sword in terms of once you get in? So the sales process is probably really, really long.
It can be. It can be.
And then once you're in, then it's a matter of just listening to your customer, and then hopefully you're in there. Your moat is already dug.
That's the goal. With each new institution is to try to upsell and grow within it. Right. And to sort of like plant my flag and become not a vendor or customer relationship, but a collaborator. I use these early customers to make the product better. I'm very open about that. I take their feedback, good, bad, and ugly. But yeah, absolutely. The goal, especially in a situation like institutional purchases, if I get that first year, I want to be in there for 20, 30 years.
Sure.
Right? This is not a quick purchase and off we go. Like I want to be embedded in who they are, the framework.
Wasn't that sales 101? Huh? Sales 101 is it's more expensive to find a new client than to retain a client.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is the first year that I've really had like good renewals because it's been just this bumpy road, losing people. And this is the first year I can really feel that. And it's what I've been trying to do for a long time. And now it's like, wow, it's like, this is exactly what I hoped it would be. It's like a built-in revenue that I can count on and plan for and forecast for, and then I can get out there and try to get more. It's taken 3-4 years to really feel that on the turn, starting with from scratch product. So I'm not sitting here telling you that happened quickly. I'm in here for the long haul, and I haven't raised money and I haven't taken on debt, and I'm just very interested in growing an organic business right now because I'm interested in growing a brand. And so I'm in it. I'm not looking to sell it. I'm not on that path to like being acquired. I'm trying to grow something unique to me. And, that's how I feel today. So that's why I'm not actively raising money, although I stay close to that process and I try to understand it to make sure that it's not something I don't want to do right now. But the business has good margins and renewals, and I'm just like trying to roll through that.
Who gives you better feedback, teachers or students, or feedback/suggestions?
Both. Let me give you an example. And I wish I could talk to students more. It's been hard with COVID because you can't I'm talking to teachers and admins all day. What I did a check-in session with a classroom several weeks ago in California, and the student raised her hand and said, "What does CC mean in an email?" And I'm like, wow, And not only that, I did another check-in with a student in Boston, and he didn't even, just get your head in this headspace for a second. He didn't even know how to open up the window to start an email.
Wow.
So you talk about when schools are falling short. They think students know how to send an email. He doesn't even know how to open one.
Yeah, it's the dummy's guide aspect of things, right? Where people,
I'm going way back. So to your question, Tim, the feedback to me, it's solid gold from anybody. And anybody who's willing to think about what I've made and give me feedback on it, I'm like ready for you. Just give it to me.
I appreciate that. I don't think many do appreciate that. I think about my TV days. I would rewatch everything. I would like every podcast, every actual like TV world, traditional stuff. Like I would be like religiously, probably a full-time job, just rewatching everything.
Yeah.
And I think there's something so powerful in that, and getting in allowing me then to get into business to be like, yo, give me as much feedback as possible. Sometimes it like really is like a Mike Tyson punch to the gut. But if that person who's giving you that feedback is valuable in the spectrum of things that are important, then then you got to listen to that and maybe act on it. And so I appreciate that. And I think that's something in entrepreneurship and business that people, if they could do more of that, they would probably see more success. But they're so they have so much pride that their baby is the prettiest thing in the world. It's like, just
let me give you a really good example. Okay, it happened yesterday. There's a customer at the university level that I thought we had a good run with last year. They elected to leave the material out of their course for the fall, okay, which is disappointing. But along the way, one of the faculty members gave me some excellent feedback on how they want to do like reporting and measuring of student exercises in the program. So they're not even going to be a customer anymore. But because they were a customer at the time, and I asked them what they thought, they gave me some really good advice that we're now implementing to make a custom update to how the program does reporting and metrics. So like, even, I take the feedback from any direction and I stick it in a list of things to do, or at least to evaluate. And I'm so unemotional at this point about the product, which is hard to keep that distance as a founder, but I'm trying to be like over here being objective about it. And I remember reading about the creator of Zoom, and he's like, he was insane about feedback. And Jeff Bezos is too. Like the dude, they just live on customer feedback and reviews, and like they immerse themselves in it, and they just were totally unemotional about it and objective about it, and look where they are.
Well, think about how many people just move from career to career too. So that person who's in wherever, I'm guessing a city, Cheyenne, Wyoming school system, right, now is in Los Angeles, and that's the way that you get into LA. So you never know that. And so like, I have this like point like on my list of things I want to ask you about is just like, don't burn a bridge. And that's basically what I'm hearing out of that too, is like, hey, like as much as you want to in the moment get mad at this thing, don't burn that damn bridge.
Can I tell you what I love about this business so much on the sales side? Is like, okay, let's say like right now we're working in.
Are you gonna? I thought you wanted to listen to our feedback. I have to say yes or no in this situation.
Oh, sorry. Just say yes.
Yes, it's okay. You can give it. You can tell us.
So the point is like working with a school system in Virginia, right? And then they go to a conference and they say, oh, we're working with this Rubin company on email writing, and the other principal's like, oh, what's that? I want to know, because they don't want to fall behind the other school, right? So it's this incredible like insular network that talks to each other a lot, and they're not really competing because they want to help each other. At the end of the day, it's just cities, right? So, but to your point, I got to keep everything on the up and up because people float in and out of rooms, local, state, national, all the time. And I want them to talk about my company and my product favorably, because you just never know who the next person's going to be who might hear about it. And then they come to me and it ends up being this really significant sale, right? So like, you're absolutely right. I never snap back at people. I just say, I'm grateful for your feedback. And even if inside it hurts me a little bit because it's like something I really believe in, or maybe I think they're wrong, right here, I'm just like, I really appreciate you saying that, and then I sleep on it and they're probably right. Because the bottom line is they're the educators. They're the ones, implementing this material. I'm just giving it to them. So if they need it a certain way, then what the hell do I know? Right. They're the ones doing the work. Ultimately, they're like almost like subcontractors for me. Yes. They're doing this work for me. If they need it a certain way, I'm going to make that happen for them.
But real quick, Tim, the answer to that, I think you can always have the same answer too, right? Is this like, I appreciate your feedback. So that way you're not like giving your emotions in it, whether it's good or bad, just always say the exact same thing. That's how someone who's listening could say, well, how do I do that when I don't like what they're saying? Well, when you like what they're saying, and you're indifferent and the bad side of it, just give them the exact same answer. And that's how you fix it. I mean, it's just don't allow emotions to get into it.
But I would say 99% of the time, they're right.
They live it, Tim.
They're right. They're right.
I'm curious, how much has communication changed, at least the trends and how we communicate over the course of the time that you've been in the business? So if you look back at when you first started writing those templates, do you look back at those and be like, wow, that is just crazy compared to how people communicate today? Is it timeless for the most part?
Yes, I believe that effective communication is a timeless skill. It doesn't grow old. The mediums in which we communicate constantly change, and where we communicate changes. But how we communicate should not. There's a book written over 100 years ago called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That book is still bought today in many, many times because the advice holds true. How you treat people still matters. So none of that goes away. It's just where in which, Dale Carnegie, there was no email then, it was letters, right? But how you approach people, how you treat them, that will not change. And that's another reason why I love this SaaS model with schools is, we need to update the material. Like we just added a resource on how to post a resume to TikTok and how to add your preferred pronouns into Zoom. Like we're staying up with trends, but the core lessons will not change, or they shouldn't change for a very long time. And I think that's also something that I'm after, that enduring product that can year over year be there with slight modification, but it's built and it's alive. And I'm not going to overhaul it completely because my advice will not change.
The platform doesn't. The platform might change, right? So, TikTok. But the thing that you're writing on TikTok is the same thing that Dale Carnegie wrote.
That's exactly right. And that's what I love about it too, is I'm after those long-term impacts, long-term relationships. I'm not a flavor of the week kind of guy. I don't jump at things that are hot. I just believe what I believe. I don't change my tune, but I make sure I'm aligning what I'm doing with the modern world.
Well, I was going to ask what the flavor of the week was at the Yard, the hip new milkshake bar in Virginia Beach, but
haven't tried.
I guess I'm not going to do that. Have you ever been there?
No, I've seen the pictures. It looks.
Have you seen this place, Tim?
Like a stomach ache.
It's a mason jar.
Yeah.
Not that big of a mason jar, but it's a mason jar and then ice cream and then something wild on top of it. And I think it's like $15-$16 per person. And I think they just do dessert.
It is very expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's their business model. Look, they know, they've got their business figured out. Their franchise
business is hoping that people will take pictures and be like, OMG, look at this thing.
Well, they know they have their formula, right? And they just press on the gas pedal. And I really respect that. I try to watch businesses all the time outside of my space. I'm like observing, especially in the space too. Like, how are you doing what you're doing? There's a company that just got acquired in this ed tech space for a lot of money that did a great job scaling over the last 4 years, getting into tons of school divisions. And I'm just I'm watching them. And I actually have a friend who's on their sales team there. And so I ask him questions about how they build their sales team and how they structure stuff. And I'm very interested in seeing what works and trying to take the best parts of that and apply it to mine. Because they've already had good success.
Zach, this is the second week, 2 weeks in a row that we've had a drummer on the show.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
What's the best? What's your favorite song to play the drums to?
Oh wow! I haven't had a drum set in many years. I've been thinking about
fake drummer.
But no, I'm a real one. I played for a long time. My favorite drummer growing up that I'd always listen to and try to model is Carter Beauford from Dave Matthews, because I think he's an incredible musician and so creative with his patterns. So there's plenty of Dave Matthews songs that I would love to just jam out to right now and just be in my own little world.
So you've moved you grew up here, right? Virginia Beach. Mm-hmm. You went to Charlottesville, which is probably why you love Dave Matthews, right?
That helps. That helps.
Right? Then you come back here for your first job, is my understanding. You go, or you go to DC. To do something.
I got a master's. In Maryland in broadcasting, and went to Channel 3 here, and then went to DC.
Here. You went back to DC, and now you're back. So, is there a main reason why you continue to live here?
Yeah, well, I have my kids have their grandparents 2 miles away. That helps. No, look, this is where I'm from. This is where I want to live. This is where I feel most comfortable. This is my community, and I intend to build a great business. I want to here, and so that's what I want to do. And there are other places I could start this, but the world's remote today. There's talent everywhere. And so I have no intention of going anywhere. I really want to be in Virginia Beach, and this is my little spot, and also just to be involved in the community here too in various ways, as I have been over the past several years, just because this is my, home turf. I came back initially to work with my parents in our PR firm, where I still do. But as this evolves, I want to build this sort of standalone business and run this day to day. And I want to do it here. I don't have a great reason to leave. I've lived in big cities. I've experienced that. I don't miss it. Whenever I go to DC, I'm like, that was fun, but I don't miss trying to park. Like I was there 2 weeks ago and I'm like, this sucks. I don't like being in big cities. They're not that fun. And so they're expensive and they're not that fun. So I did it in my 20s and now I'm 37 and I'm good.
Okay, so part two of that question is, this region has a tendency to infight, has a tendency to have a brand issue, things like that. Like,
you don't say.
Well, I think it's a scapegoat. The more as I look back at this now, it's a scapegoat to say it. The infighting is irrelevant. The regionalism is irrelevant and things like that. Like, and there probably needs to be a heck of a lot more context to me just saying that, obviously.
Well, I understand. I get it.
But you, brand ambassador, brand dude, a guy who understands building a brand over the last 10 years, family business, has come back and boomeranged. Like, what are your thoughts on kind of the brand of just the area? I'm not going to, throw a moniker or anything like that, but like, what's missing? What can be done to do a better job of kind of marketing? Insert whatever moniker name you want here.
It follows. Look, there are people who can start their own businesses, and we know the people in this community. You know better than anybody who's out there trying to start something from scratch, based here. But to really bring in a lot of talent, it follows the available jobs. So one thing that I'd rather not dwell on the negative, I'd rather look at the positive. And one thing that really excites me over the next 10 years is this wind power cottage industry that's going to blossom here, I think, and along our waterways, that will bring a lot of talented people doing a lot of niche jobs that pay well, and that will help bring talent to us. We don't have the muscle that other markets do, Raleigh, even Richmond, Charlotte, DC. Like, we don't have the corporations here. We only have now one Fortune 500 company, which is really, you think about the long history of our region, to only have Dollar Tree as the only, now with Norfolk Southern gone.
Is Smithfield not one anymore?
Well, I suppose so. Maybe they're the two. And so, but for a region of this size to have two, over the last 100 years, like, I don't know where the next one's going to come from, but I at least want to try and bring talented people to us through available jobs. And once they're here, maybe there's other startups and things that they get attracted to. I just want to believe that this region can, find another level up over the next several years. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm going to try and grow my business just the same. I'm not really impacted by whether we're this blossoming, burgeoning economy or not. But it would be nice to know, and I'm going to do my best to contribute to that. That's all I can say. I can just control what I can control. And I hope that you talk to me in 10 years and I have a real deal thing going on, and it's a company that people just know around here. But
this is where I announce that you are running for mayor, president of the region.
No thanks. I was actually asked to run for city council in Virginia Beach, and I'm like, no, thank you. I have enough in front of me, and my head is really outside of this market most of the day because the customers are all over the place. So, but I want to be built here and grow here.
Something that I think that you didn't mention, but you kind of mentioned is companies, right? So you think about San Francisco, there are companies that made you think of those areas, right? There, the Richmonds of the world, the DCs of the world,
Absolutely.
Right? When I think about DC business, I think about AOL,
identity,
right? And so what really, so if we were to get behind something, it would get behind the Dollars of the world, the Smithfields of the world, or those companies on the cusp, and really start to push those, because those are the companies, people know that in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, it's the Facebook, Twitters of the world. And so it's like, okay, but that because of those companies, and they've been pushing those. So you have companies here that you can push, whether it's those two or a plethora of others. Push those. I
think honestly, this region needs to be pushing the companies that are going to move here and develop here around wind power and the data centers, because those are we only in this area, we only can really lean on our geographical advantages. That's all we've really got. We have tourism.
So you wouldn't push the aspect of the big three that they always talk about,
Well, but I mean, what are you going to do with that? I mean, it's no, because they're established, they're built, and I don't see a industry building up around Dollar Tree to support new jobs. Like, Dollar Tree is Dollar Tree, but I'm looking at where's the growth, what hasn't been achieved yet. To me, it's wind power, it's data centers, and maybe biotech, which there were discussion about it, but it's kind of fallen off. Like that's where I would want to see, like, if people, I've had friends leave this market because they want 6-figure salaries and they can't find it except for the one place they worked, and then they got moved out or laid off or this or that, and they have to go to DC or other places because they cannot find those C-level jobs around here. There just aren't that many outside of the health systems. Dollar Tree, Norfolk Southern just left. That's a huge hit. So I would rather focus on what has yet to be, and talk about identity. Like, this region in 10 years should be known as like the wind power capital of the East Coast. And if you can become known for that, then that generates its own gravity, and people come there and start their own businesses around that. And then it becomes known, and there's all these available jobs that pay good salaries in something that we have a geographical advantage around. No one else can take that from us. Richmond could never do it. San Francisco is not going to do it. Tulsa's not going to do it. We can do it. So we have to continue to lean on like who we are, and just like maximize that, because we're not going to be known for something outside of having water here. Let's just get real about it.
But the water is the thing, right? I mean, it's still something that's focused on the water, and I think you can play with it. Yeah.
That's who this region is, and we have, and I'm glad I'm seeing a lot of energy like working towards that, because like you got to control it.
Because you're the first person I'm hearing really push that.
Oh no, you're going to hear a lot more about it in the coming years, because Dominion's building 280 wind turbines off the coast, and there are companies setting up shop to build these turbines domestically. Like it's a serious business, and if this region's smart, they would own that and become known for it.
What I'm saying is, I haven't heard people articulate it saying that's the thing that we need to be pushing. They're talking about it, but obviously it's not that thing to own it, be the brand around it, kind of in the way that you're saying.
To your question, like, talk about identity, like let's something no one else can take from us. Unless like Philadelphia, Baltimore, Charleston tries. If we miss the boat on this and someone else steals that identity off the coast, that's the next 50 years. Sorry to say, but that's the next 50 years in this region. So we got to get it. We got to get it now. And I know there are people in this community who are working on that every day, so we don't lose out and continue to kind of, limp along. Sounds like that's Danny's platform. And I'm not in any way trying to start a company for wind power. I got my own thing. I'm just saying, if we want to, we're not going to be known for email etiquette companies, in 10 years. I hope my company's known for that, but the region would not be. But the region could be known for wind power, and that's sort of bigger than all of us.
Well, if they come to town, they're going to need to know how to respond to email.
they can use my products. We'll do it that way. They can buy a subscription. That's what I want.
Tim, any final thoughts?
No, anything that we didn't touch on that you would like to touch on, Danny?
No, I always appreciate the chance to talk to, always Zach, and Tim, you ask great questions. So thanks for giving me the platform. Always happy to join conversations and do my best to support our local startup community and just be another, hopeful entrant in the startup community. And hopefully all of us break through in our own way, in our own time. This is a hard road, but to me, it's the most meaningful thing I've ever done. I take tremendous pride and joy in the work that I get to do, and sort of chart my own course. So I'm going to do my best to keep it going.
Awesome.
Wonderful. And with that, I will remind you guys to vote Rubin 2024. Have a great day. Thanks.